I do, before I forget, want to ask you about Iran. What role do they play in this conflict? It's fascinating how it seems like Iran is fingerprints are everywhere in the Middle East. And it's also fascinating that, I have a lot of friends, my best friend is Iranian. It's fascinating that the Islamic Revolution in Iran took the country from the leadership perspective backwards in such a drastic way,
Yes.
and that they're still in power. That confuses me because I know now it's possible I don't know the people of Iran. Sorry to make the obvious statement, but I just have a lot of friends in Iran, and a lot of them, everybody I know there opposes the regime, and they're brilliant,
Yes.
educated, thoughtful, worldly people. And it confuses me that this is one of the, I would say, one of the greatest nations on earth, in terms
Certainly
of
one of the great cultures of Earth.
cultures,
Yes.
the peoples of
Yes.
Iran.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
then you look at that, and then you look at the leadership, when they're behind most of the terror groups.
In the region, certainly. Yeah.
Can you just speak to that, and how is it still the same regime since 1979?
I know. As you know, I start on Democracies and
Mhm.
Death Cults with the flight taking the Ayatollah Khomeini rather, from Paris to Tehran.
The flight that you say you wish never happened.
I think it's one of the two worst journeys of the 20th century.
What's the other one? Was it
Lenin's train getting to Petrograd.
Yeah. So it's always about the transportation.
Yes, I know. I'm really a transport guy. No, I wait till my book of 10 best journeys.
Yeah. Across the world.
No, just as the train to the Finland station brought the bacillus of Bolshevism into Russia, so the flight coming from Paris, bringing the Ayatollah Khomeini to Tehran, brought the bacillus of Khomeinism, the most radical form of Shiite Islam, to Tehran and to Iran. And it's one of the great tragedies of the modern era, what happened there. Like you, actually, I have a lot of Persian friends, and I had the great good fortune early in my life to have a very close late friend who had grown up in pre-revolutionary Iran, was very fond of the Shah and so on. Her father had been an Ayatollah before the overthrow of the Shah, but everyone had criticisms of him. But when you saw what came after him, it just it was, among other things, what I learned from her and other friends from that region was that, I suppose, two things. One is, of course, is that it's a sort of central conservative insight. Things can always be worse. They can always be worse. Never say this is rock bottom, because
Yeah.
like, you might have a Shah with hundreds or even thousands of political prisoners in cells, but you could always have Ayatollah Khomeini butchering them all, and including the people who helped him get to power, like the communists and the trade unionists who simply were fighting against the Shah and then were very useful for the Ayatollah until he didn't need them anymore. But the other thing I learned from that particular friend and others was this thing that, and again, it's very hard for the Western mindset, very hard for the American mindset in particular, that there is such a thing as fanaticism, real fanaticism, and real ideological and real religious fanaticism, and the thing that I describe leads to the death cult mindset. That fanaticism is something which is very easy for the West to forget because we haven't seen it in a while. We get very distant echoes of it in our own societies, really. And we're highly attuned to hear them, which is good in some ways. But Khomeinism not only vastly set back the Persian people, the Iranian nation, but has managed to keep it in subjugation since 1979. And your question of why gets to one of the really the biggest questions, really, that has to be the answer to which has to be understood, which is, It's what Solzhenitsyn says at one point in Gulag Archipelago, in that passage where he describes when we heard the footsteps on the staircase and the knock was on our neighbor's door, and we knew our neighbor was being taken away. Why did we not stop them? And in the case of the revolutionary government in Iran, it's the same answer as whether it's Hamas governing Gaza with the people, whoever the people in Gaza are who would have liked to have seen them overthrown. Whatever. It's, you know, people don't realize that despite the rhetoric and everything else, everything changes if the other guy might kill you. And that, when the Green Revolution in 2009 started in Iran, why was it put down? Why didn't it work? Why, like the sort of Iranians who I really hope one day get their country back, why did all these smart young students and others, why after they came out, why was it put down? It was put down because the Basij militia will shoot you in the head and they'll take you to a prison, as they did with the Iranian students, and they'll rape you with bottles and kill you. And even a little bit of that goes an awfully long way to tell the rest of society not to do it again. We know it happens like that from films, but too few people understand that regimes like that in Tehran operate like that on a grand scale, on the biggest of scales, and with the ultimate of brutality. And that's how they stay in power. And one other thing on that, by the way, which is, I was reminded of this the other day, but, thinking about this sort of, what I've just described as a sort of a problem in democracies is that we just, we like to think everyone thinks like us, and, we'd like everyone to sort of be like us. And we believe fictions that we're taught in films like, everyone basically wants the same things as us. And you go, you haven't stepped outside the walls of the city if you think that. But the second thing is this thing of the death cults, of why we sort of singly fail to understand that this is possible. And Khomeinism is both very specific and also very strongly linked to totalitarian and radical and extremist death cult movements that are not that far in our past. I mean, there's a moment in when Oriana Fallaci interviewed the Ayatollah Khomeini in 1979, one of the very few Western journalists to do so. She says to him, these people in the street, this movement, this revolution you've begun, it's guided by hate. It's hate. It's all hate. And Khomeini says, no, it's love. It's love. And it's actually a scene that appears in the Satanic Verses of Rushdie, where that exact same thing happens. But I was thinking about this recently because I was thinking, but how can you explain to a Western mindset that that's something that's going on? There are people directed by this hate that calls itself love. And I was reminded of a book I haven't read since I was probably a teenager or something. It made a great impression on me then. Did you ever read the Tragic Sense of Life? Miguel de Unamuno, a great Spanish existentialist philosopher who died in the 30s. Unamuno had an encounter with students at the university in the 30s when he realized, this is the early period of the Francoists, de Rivera and all those people. Unamuno is at this meeting and the chant goes up from the eager students who have fallen into this sort of phalangist Francoist ideology already. They end up chanting in front of him as he's trying to defend the principles by which he has lived his life. They end up chanting in front of him, Viva la muerte. Long live death. Long live death. And he tries to explain to them, this is This is a necrophilic chant.
Yeah.
But those young men in pre-Franco Spain shouting "Long live death," they have their counterparts today. They are the people who taunt Americans, Westerners, Israelis, and others with lines like, "We love death more than you love life."
Yeah, that's the line you return to. That's a really difficult line to load in. Because if you base your whole existence on that notion, then, well, you're a danger to the world. That's a good foundation for committing evil.